Hi, welcome to the MTC's Immersive Virtual Reality Cave. What we're going to do here is bring the Smart Automation Living Lab to the UK through the facilities available here at the MTC. So the tools I'm going to use are 3D glasses with built-in sensors so that the screen and the image can sense exactly where I am relative to the machine position. Also, we've got a Nintendo Wii that's been adapted so that we can move around and navigate around the machine. And finally, we have a pointer so you can see what I'm looking at. So the point there is it that I'm talking about. The idea of the Living Lab is it's a production environment, and what we're trying to do is develop a mass customization solution at a low value. So basically, it's a jar with a number of components that are selected and put into the jar. You'll see the design of the Living Lab is a modular concept. So you'll see all these modular bases here. Each base has its own energy monitoring unit, so we can analyse the energy consumption and optimise the energy usage as we go through the manufacturing process. Most of the devices you'll see have Ethernet capability. So we talk a lot about the Internet of Things. Well, this is a very good example of how the Internet of Things can work alongside the manufacturing process in a customised environment. So we're also going to gather a lot of data as we go through the manufacturing process. And again, people refer to big data. I'm going to show you some examples of how we can use that big data to optimise your manufacturing process. So we select the components here in the SCADA system. That information is then sent to the flexible manufacturing system, which is basically a soft PLC. Once the soft PLC sees the selection, then it starts the process off. And what it will do first, and we'll move across to the other side of the machine. On the other side, you'll see there's a robot arm over here. And the robot arm will start off by selecting the jar from this holding area here. So it will pick up the jar and place it onto a conveyor. Now, one of the key differences between reality and virtual reality is the fact now in virtual reality, I can move inside the machine. Obviously, physical constraints in reality won't allow you to do this. So we'll move around, and now what we're doing is looking at it from inside the machine. So the robot will place the bottle onto this conveyor, and the conveyor then will take the bottle along past a barcode reading head, and that information then will be sent back to the flexible manufacturing system, and it will then correlate the barcode of the jar with the original selection. So the idea of this is that whenever the jar is seen in the manufacturing process, the machine knows exactly what to do to it. So as opposed to the way we normally manufacture, where the machine decides what to do to the component, in this case the component decides to tell the machine what it wants to do to it. So on the next stage, it will then take off the lid. Because this is a cyclic process, this jar will have been through a manufacturing process already. So we're going to take the lid off, and then further along the process, this robot will take the jar off the conveyor and empty the components into this holding area here, and then place the empty jar back onto the conveyor. So again, we're going to move through the robot, across to the other side. And on this part of the process, we have a number of vibrating hoppers. These hold the components that we're going to place inside the jar. So if we look underneath here, you can see now there's the jar, and there's the bottom part of the hoppers, and the components will then be placed into the jar, and then the table will rotate the jar and put the jar back onto the conveyor. So we'll move along to the next part of the process. So the next part of the process is that the jar is then taken off the conveyor, and then the components are emptied out onto this rotating table. The table then moves the products around underneath this camera, and this vision camera will then look for the colour of the components, send the information back to the flexible manufacturing system to make sure the selection meets the actual components that are on the rotating table. And the products move around and are placed back into the jar. Now, the jar can be placed back onto the conveyor, but the point here is that it doesn't matter if the conveyor already holds an existing production batch. It makes absolutely no difference. So when it goes back on the conveyor, wherever it is in the production process, the machines will know what to do to the component, to the jar. So again, we move a bit further along, The next stage, the camera is going to look at the shape of the products to make sure that it fits the original selection. Further down here, again, we'll see quite a few of these heads around the machine, and this reads the barcode to make sure it knows exactly where the jar is at any point, and then also put the relevant labels and the relevant caps on the machine, on the jar. So as we move around to the other side, you'll see here, this is where we put the relevant coloured lid onto the jar, and then the final part of the process is that the jar is taken off the conveyors by this robot and placed onto the containers, and once we have all the bottles in the containers that relate to the original selection, then the container is then moved across to the high bay warehouse, and then eventually the container will be delivered to the customer with the right selection as required from the customer in the first place.